Welcome back to All in Affordable Housing here at LTV. I'm your host, Matt Lownes, and today it is a fun one. I have Michael Daly, the Senior Housing Advocate for East End YIMBY. He is a legend. Almost every guest I've interviewed has mentioned Michael Daly off air before we were able to even start the show. And then to his left, I'm bad with directions. I'm so confused right now. But next to him is Ian Wilder, the Executive Director of the Long Island Housing Services. I've interviewed Ian previously, and I'm very happy to have him in the studio. How are you guys both doing?
Good. Not too bad. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here with you and Ian, one of my heroes.
Yeah, no, what you guys do is awesome. It's incredible to see the work that you've done. After I've talked to both of you before, previously alone, and it's great to have you both in here. This is the first three-person all in affordable housing show, so I'm really excited to have you guys do that. What have you guys been up to specifically? You, Michael, with East End YIMBY, and you, with Ian, with the Long Island Housing Services. Give me a little tidbit of what you guys have been up to.
Well, before we get started, I want to tell you that now you are one of my heroes with this podcast that you're doing. You're bringing these conversations to light and to the public, and you know, your interview of, I think your talk with Nadia specifically was really moving for me, and I appreciate what you're doing, and it's an honor to be here with you and Ian. So anyway, quickly, what we've been up to, you know, I'm a real estate broker and have been for 23 years, and the most recent thing that we've been doing is educating all members of our team about the new fair housing standard operating procedures that have been put out by New York State. And they've been put in place to make sure that every customer that we have is treated fairly. So that's what I'm doing, as well as looking for listings, and inventory is still low out there on the real estate side, I'll tell you that.
Oh, well, that doesn't shock me too much, but could you give me an example maybe of one of the bigger changes that you noticed that you just mentioned that you now have to readjust with, maybe?
Well, the point of the new standard operating procedures law was to make sure that every person that we meet as a real estate agent is treated consistently, fairly, and equally. So that if somebody comes in a Maserati, you know, you're not like, hey, dude, you know, come on in. And then somebody comes in, you know, kind of dressed down. You're like, can I see your ID? You know, or when somebody makes an offer, they, in 99% of the country, you know, they provide a pre-approval or a proof of funds with that, okay, to back up their offer on a property. Out here and in other parts of Long Island, when somebody makes an offer, you know, if they look fancy schmancy, you know, they're like, okay, that's cool, you know, we'll pass it on. But other people's, you know, I want to see proof of funds, you know, or show me your pre-approval. We need to do that consistently now with each and every person that comes to our house, our listings, okay? And we have to take the instructions of our sellers on how they want that applied. Consistently, evenly, and fairly for every person that we deal with.
Bluntly put, you know, I don't beat around the bush here on this show. Have you seen bad practices from other real estate agents firsthand? I mean, it's obviously I don't want you to tell anyone's name and put it out there, but have you seen unfair practices from real estate agents in your history?
It's more about having heard of it. Have I witnessed some people saying things that are inappropriate about, oh, you don't want to live in that neighborhood? Yeah, I have. I have. And it's something that is not necessarily even conscious. It may be part of people's ignorance, and there's a fine line between ignorance and arrogance, right? Yeah, we have seen it, and it's just part of our professional training to bring fair housing practices to our professional way of doing business. And not leave anything for question.
Yeah.
So, we're committed to doing that. My team's committed to doing that. We've trained on it. We've implemented it, and
Awesome.
we're proud of that.
Yeah, no, that's great to hear. And obviously, Ian, from the outside looking in, from just my viewpoint, some would say, how are you two good friends? You got a real estate agent who's trying to sell homes, sell homes, sell homes. And then you got Ian, who's executive director of the Long Island Housing Services and works for Fair Practices. So it makes no sense in your head. But Michael's one of the good guys, as we know. He's not, just trying to make money, and that's his only priority. Tell me a little bit about what you've been up to. I know you were just on vacation with your family. I hope that went well. But tell me a little bit about how it's been over there, and how working with people like Michael is probably a lot easier than working with real estate agents you don't like.
Yeah, vacation was good. The thankful thing about having a 4-year-old is I got 11,000 steps in yesterday. We went to the park, several bike rides.
Oh, that's great.
With a little one, you get a lot of exercise, especially when the weather's nice. I want to echo what Mike said. And by way of explanation of something we do, when we settle something, when we have a case, and there's a reason why I'm jumping to this. And then
please.
I'll get to your answer.
Yeah, please.
When we settle a case, we won't do a confidential settlement. Besides the fact that doing confidential settlements is wrong, the information should be in the market. But we don't do that to punish the person that we feel did something wrong. We do that because we want to use it as an example to educate for somebody who's in the market to go, oh, these are the things that we could be doing wrong. And our settlements always have forward-looking policy changes, like Mike's talking about. And these are the things I should do. These are the types of policies I should have in order to make sure these things don't go wrong. So the same way, I'm very, very appreciative of this program because really, I'm a big believer that one of the best ways to get changes is to get change into the culture, which means they have to be in the medium, they have to be in TV, they have to be in music. If you look at cultural changes in this country, yes, the advocates were in the streets and in the legislatures, but you also saw, the entertainment and the news industry reporting on it and educating people and having a discussion. And so I agree that the work you're doing is very important. Now, going back, I was a real estate attorney for over a dozen years. I know a lot of brokers. I know a lot of agents. There's jokes in their office when names come up that I know everybody on Long Island, which I'm not even close. Mm-hmm. But our mission is to end discrimination and for people to have affordable and safe housing. That should not be a conflict for what a real estate agency does. I mean, I make a capitalist libertarian argument that it's just good business for them to have policies and to have everybody treated the same. I mean, I was half jokingly saying before we were talking, just treat every client like they're a tester.
Exactly.
If you and then you will give everybody the highest quality. And what Mike was talking about, when I was in private practice, I represented some small builders too. I did all kinds of real estate. And I had a client buying a plot, and the guy who was buying the plot from was somebody who had built up 110. I'm talking about he took the farmland and built office buildings. So you want to stop? You're getting the dollar signs, okay?
Wow.
The guy showed up in our office himself. He put his son through Harvard Law School. His son was now his attorney. I can't remember his name. Probably people in Farmingdale know what I'm talking about at the time. And he showed up in his office, and he was wearing a ratty T-shirt and cut-off jeans shorts because he was dropping off the contract himself. And he was older, so I guess he had time. And he looked like he was going to ask me at the time for 50 cents for a cup of coffee. But he could have bought and sold the block we were standing on. Yeah. So, and that goes for all kinds of demographics. Treat everybody as if they're your best customer. And it's really simple. If you're doing that, then, we're not we're not anti anybody. We're very happy when we do a test and there's nothing wrong. You know, we're not looking for things to be wrong. You know, in some ways, we'd be thrilled if we were out of business. But unfortunately, I don't see that happening anytime soon. You know, we got a lot of work to do, and it's not Long Island. You know, despite the impression some people might get from a newspaper series, it's not just real estate agents, it's societal. So it affects every single industry, and we test everything that's involved with housing and real estate, and we see problems across the board. You know, we've had source of income legislation in Suffolk County for over a decade. Yet we still get people say explicitly, I'm not talking about implicit testing like they go in and they treat people different. I'm saying they explicitly say, oh, we don't take programs, or we don't take this voucher, we don't.
Right.
And it's been against the law here for over 10 years. And I'm not talking about some, you know, some person who owns a house and they're renting out an apartment upstairs. I'm talking about developments. I'm talking about people who should have professionalized and trained already. You know, that's part of being in business. If you don't like it, don't do the job. Just like you can't have a restaurant and say, well, you know, this cleanliness thing is too much work. The Board of Health is going to disagree with a little bit with you, and they're going to shut you down. If you want to choose to be in a certain business, you have to do certain things. We're a nonprofit. We have to do certain things to stay a nonprofit. We have to do a lot of reporting to our grantors. Is it fun? No. But it's part of doing the job. So, you know, do the job.
You know, I want just
Yeah,
to comment
please,
on something on that is part of the challenges that I see is that, you know, we often come up with these good laws, these good regulations, and then somehow the state doesn't fund the enforcement of them well enough. And I know you, at your organization, you know, you're hiring people now, and the Suffolk County Human Rights Commission, you know, is understaffed. And so it's all too often of a practice to put these laws and regulations and ordinances into place, but then not fund the enforcement of it, and then for the organizations and the businesses to not fund the training of their staff around them.
Well, some good news at least. In Suffolk, not necessarily in Nassau, they have increased the funding a great deal for the Human Rights Commission in Suffolk.
Terrific. Good.
We actually had a very active, though it's disappeared, Suffolk County Fair Housing Task Force that put out a really good report. Unfortunately, it's supposed to be an ongoing process, and the process kind of died. I've been calling various legislators to say, okay, so when's the next meeting? And I haven't gotten an answer from the legislators for government operations who's supposed to be in charge, or from the presiding officer's office, just to call out some names. But there has been funding for Suffolk County. I mean, we continually get funding from the federal government. We appreciate it. The state just put $2 million in the budget for fair housing testing. We're not clear where that money's going yet because the budget just got passed. But there has been some increased funding and some increased awareness. And to give your fellow media credit, the Newsday series shined a light on how fair housing's been ignored.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Helpful.
You know, Michael, you could probably give the gist better than I can of that article. Tell the public a little bit about the gist of that article and how, and I want your direct reaction after reading it.
Ian's recount of it would be better than mine.
Oh yeah, Ian.
I'll give you what I know from the perspective of being a real estate agent, broker, and also a person who
I want both of your reactions to it. Yeah.
What was discovered was something that we know has existed out there for a long time, where agents steering buyers to areas that they personally believed that they would probably prefer to live because you are a what have you, or steering people away from areas that they maybe as real estate agents didn't think they wanted them to live, or that they didn't think that their clients would be happy if they brought people to those areas. Steering and requiring identifications if you didn't look the way they wanted you to look. Requiring strict proof of funds if they didn't know you or didn't like you. We just saw so much steering, and it's been going on Long Island for hundreds of years, and it's still going on.
I'm sure
today.
it's been going on
It's still
everywhere
going on
for the
today.
most
Long
part.
Island is one of the most segregated communities regions in
Yep.
the United States.
Yep.
Okay, and there's lots of data to support.
Oh, yeah.
And it still is. And so, thank goodness, I'm glad that Newsday did an expose of that. I was really pleasantly surprised because it was about time that somebody on Long Island, and Newsday has in the past been mostly a conservative publication, and I appreciate them, stepping up and doing an expose on that.
To some people, that probably the most shocking thing said today that you call conservative, which I agree with, because Newsday is often called too liberal by people, which I don't think they are. Newsday did testing similar to what we do. No, and I agree.
For those at home, can you explain the test?
Sure. That's what I'm going to get to.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the most common version is what's called pair testing, and it's like what people think of as secret shopper.
Yep.
You send out two people. They have pretty much the same exact description of them. They come in, they have a similar profession, they're making similar amounts of money, they have similar credit ratings. The only difference is one demographic. It could be skin color, or could be a disability. It could be a number of things.
Could be religion.
It could be religion.
Yeah.
There's only one difference, and they get sent out and they see what they're offered if they're given different service. Now, the thing is with testing based on race, we have at least gotten to the point where people don't explicitly, well, I shouldn't even say that, because they did explicitly say it to some of the white testers who showed up.
Yeah,
They
that's right.
explicitly said, well, I wouldn't want to call it steering, but at least to the people from communities of color, they didn't explicitly say, I'm not giving you this because. But they still said things that were beyond inappropriate and possible violations of fair housing law. So we see the difference in treatment, and we have ways of testing that we know we're not just hitting somebody when they haven't had lunch yet.
Yeah.
We know it's not a one-off. We know it's not a mistake. We've been doing this for decades, and this is done nationally. These things are developed. Our processes have been approved by HUD over the years. So we're looked at.
Yeah.
We've gone to court. So what Newsday did was they picked, and I'm not saying this to criticize Newsday because there's only so much you could do. They picked one segment, and basically what they exposed is the continuing systemic racism and how that plays out in one segment of the housing industry. And that segment that they picked was real estate agents. And that's not to excuse the agents, but what I'm saying is if they looked at banks, or they looked at apartment developments, or possibly even insurance companies. There are insurance companies that won't insure, they have been sued because they won't insure developments where people have housing choice vouchers, commonly called Section 8.
Wow.
So, yeah, exactly. Hello. So
That's a serious violation.
well, in New York, it's not a violation of federal law, unfortunately, and that's a problem with doing a market-based voucher system, that if you don't have a source of income discrimination law, then the market-based voucher system doesn't work, which is one reason you need several ways to attack affordable housing, including the government getting back in the business, which it was at the beginning of the 20th century, of actually providing affordable housing to low-income and middle-class people. It provided safe, good, affordable housing. When affordable housing became racialized, especially after World War II, then they basically dropped maintaining it and stopped building it. At one point, they even passed the Faircloth Amendment, which doesn't allow the government to create any new units of affordable housing, which is mind-blowing.
Mind-boggling.
So the Newsday series exposed the discrimination that exists. The problem is that some people came away with the assumption that it's just a real estate agent problem rather than a housing problem. And so, for instance, when we were on the Suffolk County Fair Housing Task Force, they had a very limited setup in order to just look at steering. And I said, whoa, we got other problems, including municipalities. If they look at municipalities and how zoning is done,
Disparate impact.
zoning comes out of Jim Crow control of you want this group of people to live here and this group of people to live here.
Yeah,
So if they looked at almost any industry or any group that affects housing, including municipalities, it would be a problem.
Yeah, zoning, especially in Long Island, zoning is kind of ridiculous when you really get down to the bottom of it. Suffolk County is the highest in the country of single-family zoning. I believe it's 81% was the estimate I was told. And Nassau County's pretty high up there, nationally speaking, as far as the county goes, at 76%, 74 to 76%. With that being said, we know for a fact Long Island has a racist background as far as development goes with Robert Moses, with some of the things that he did and the reasons he did it for. How do you
Or
guys, what?
Or Levitt.
Exactly. There's true, we don't have to beat around the bush and pretend that there wasn't. Long Island was developed in a very racist way, whether you like, lack of a better term.
Call it what it is.
I want to kind of put this on you guys and ask you, how could we lower those numbers? How could we rezone and lower those numbers to at least closer to the national average? I mean, there's too much single-family zoning in Long Island. How can we change that where we can get more affordable housing complexes? Or maybe you don't see it as an issue and there needs to be other alternatives. I'd love to hear what you guys think about it.
Well, you want me to go? You want to go?
Go ahead.
Okay.
I'll follow you.
Sure. Almost every state, New York's considered like the most liberal state in the country by certain people.
When it comes to what, I wonder.
Yeah, I know.
wondering
I
about
understand our voting laws aren't either.
Yeah.
But every state around us has some type of system, they don't work perfectly, where you can basically appeal from home rule zoning. So that a small group of people can't decide for the rest of the state where they can live. That power makes no sense. To start with, municipalities are given their power by the state. They don't exist independently. Also, we have this thing called the Commerce Clause. It's supposed to be allowed to have people move and live wherever they want. Well, that means you need to build a variety of housing. And, I want to say for a sec, I moved away to the North Fork, away from Western Suffolk, because I hated the traffic. Guess what? I drove here this morning. It was like going back to Babylon.
Yep.
So the people who think it's wonderful, it ain't wonderful. It's the same traffic. And I believe part of that problem is that a lot of the people who work here have no place to live here.
Yeah.
So you're fouling your own well by making it impossible for the people who work here to live here. So you have an awful place where you can't drive around or get anywhere. You have to have a mix of housing, and that means we need to get away from this mythology of that home rule zoning is sacred. Yes, it's nice having local input, but people shouldn't be able to control where everybody gets to live. And so what we need is a system in New York State. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I don't even believe in home rule zoning anymore, and I don't believe in these school district lines, which are also a huge problem. But
there's racism in there as well with the districting lines.
At the very least, yeah. I mean, I actually have an article coming out in Toro Law Review next month or so about 20 things you could do to fight fair housing. So it'll be up soon.
Oh,
Share that with us, please. Yeah.
They're actually going to be having a whole program at Hofstra next couple of months on fair housing. At Hofstra, no, I'll let you know where it is.
We'll post about it.
Yeah, and so what we need to do is we need to at least take some step, at least have an appeals process. You know, the U.S. is based on due process, and part of the problem is because there's not a process to appeal. And I was a real estate attorney years ago. I know this. What would happen would be a developer, before they even put a piece of paper in or $1 down, they go into a town, they take a box of chocolates and they go into the building department. You're smiling because you know it's true. And they say, look, I want to buy this. I want to build this. And they want to know if it's even possibly doable. And if the person sitting comes up to the counter and goes, chocolates are delicious, but no, public never sees that.
Yeah.
Right.
And the reason the builder has to do that is because the building stops, including the affordable building, stops at the town level. Mm-hmm. Because the builder knows that the town can kill it. We have people on the line, all they do is build affordable housing. They would love to build more affordable housing. That's their specialty. And it's a difficult thing. They have to put together this basket of financing. And I give them a lot of credit in order to do it because they have to bring down the cost of the units. So,
well, that's what I keep reading is you hear from developers, and Michael, we'll let you get your answer in a second.
Yeah,
I
talk too much.
No, I think we all do. Well, what I keep reading is, and you know, you see it here, the East Hampton Express did a local express session on affordable housing a few weeks ago. You can see that in local East Hampton Press, and someone had mentioned it just costs too much for developers. Nevertheless, west of Southampton, but so especially east of Southampton, to build affordable housing projects when they could go up north past New York City and build up there for half the price and still make exactly what they were going to make to begin with.
Ralph Fasano, I think.
Yeah.
Put that up, yeah.
Yeah, so Michael, I'll let you go with your answer, and then we'll kind of get into the development aspect of it. You know, some people, they ask the question, Matt, is it even worth it for developers to develop out here? And I would argue, probably not. It's because it's going to take longer. It's going to be they're probably going to have lawyers at some point because of some pushback from someone.
Oh yeah.
And is it worth it? Not unless you live in the community, I would argue.
Okay, so I'm going to take my real estate broker hat off.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to put my community housing advocate hat on. Ralph Fasano is in year 4 to build 60 units for affordable workforce and veteran housing in Southampton. And he was invited by Southampton town officials out here over 4 years ago to look at doing this project. And even that, he has been held up and thwarted at every turn to do 60 units of housing, which we needed 5 years ago.
10 years, 20 years ago.
20 years ago. So Ralph has started and built 2 other very similar developments, community housing developments. The man is a saint. He's one of the most highly regarded, most professional nonprofit developers in New York, respected by New York State, by all of the departments in New York State, and it's going to be 5 years before he ever gets it done. And he said to me, Michael, if I knew this, I would not have come.
See,
and he says, and thank you, because the only reason that we're here and we're close is because of the fact that you've supported us and East End YIMBY has supported us. So the answer to your question is, we have taken home rule to the nth degree. The pendulum has swung to the point where parents are eliminating housing for their own children. Children are eliminating housing for their own parents. Sisters are eliminating housing for their brothers. We're eliminating housing we're blocking it. And, you know, while the strength of East End YIMBY right now in the last year has been community input and having people who believe that there needs to be community housing appear at town and village meetings. When we were not there, all you got were the people who walked in, closed the gate, threw away the key, and said, I'm here, nobody else is allowed to come in. and it's gone too far. It's gone to the point where it's not productive, and it's counterproductive for our settlement patterns, for our families, for our friends, for our
yeah.
businesses, for our culture. It's gone too far.